for being with us today again. I hope you had a perfect first day of this 75th International Astronautical Congress. I hope you enjoyed also the marvelous welcome reception yesterday evening, and we are very happy to see so many of you back today to kick off the second day, which is always our industry day. So focusing on industry topics, and it's my great pleasure to kick off this day by introducing our first plenary of today, titled New Lunar Frontiers, How the Non-Space Industry is Unlocking Future Markets. And this plenary is very interesting because it will explore the future of space exploration from a perspective of non-space actors, which include also leaders in design, biofarming, pharma, and nuclear energy. I would like to quickly also point out that you will again have, as usually, the chance to ask questions using our Slido system. If you are not yet familiar with it, there will be up a slide in a second, so you can just scan the code and put in the password and feel free to ask any questions. And it is now my distinct pleasure to welcome on stage the moderator of this plenary, Charlotte Nassé, Senior Government Affairs Officer at iSpace. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us today to kick off the second day of IAC. As Christian was mentioning, this is Industry Day, and so what a better way to kick off Industry Day than to take a step back from the space industry and try to get a little bit of a different perspective on what we do. Welcome to this panel on exploring new lunar frontiers and trying to see what can unlock the future markets in space exploration. My name is Charlotte Nassé, and I'll have the pleasure of moderating this discussion. Today, I'm joined by 4 inspiring speakers that are all trailblazers in their fields, and they are here to push the boundaries of what we thought was possible in space. Please welcome on stage Jae Kim, CEO and Chairman of Boryung, Jake Thompson, Director of Novel Nuclear and Space Projects from Rolls-Royce, Octave de Gaulle, co-founder and director of the Spade Agency. You can give them a round of applause, come on. We will also be joined a little bit later by Barbara Belvisi, founder and CEO of Interstellar Lab. She's just making her way over right now. So if you spot her, make her come on stage. So from the Artemis Accords to Chang'e landing on the far side of the moon, to the first commercial lander going to the moon, we are living what some have been calling the lunar revival. And as astronauts make their way to longer missions in LEO, to the lunar surface, and eventually to Mars, one thing is sure: space is now a field where bold entrepreneurship is taking the lead on government a little bit on setting the vision for what space exploration can look like. So in the past 5 years, humanity's interests for the moon has seen an incredible number of commercial actors getting involved. And I have the privilege of working for one myself. A lot of companies have been developing lunar lander technology, and I work for iSpace, one of the first commercial companies to have attempted to land on the moon. So I wanted to start this panel by showing this photography. This photo was taken on iSpace's first mission to the moon that was launched in December 2022. Behind this beautiful shot of the moon and of Earth in the background, you can also see a solar eclipse over Australia. This shot was made possible not by public funding, but by private investment entirely, and that is revolutionizing the space sector. Actually, behind this photo, there's also an entire community of non-space actors that have been involved in helping us get to the moon. So a lot of these actors, their primary business is not necessarily space. We've been working with Citizen, Japan Airlines, Epiroc, Takasago, Yokogawa, and a lot of these companies see in space the future of what we'll be doing on Earth, on the Moon, and further. So although it might seem a little odd, they all had a great role in getting us to the Moon. And so through this experience, iSpace is convinced that non-space industry play a huge role in our future on the Moon. And similarly, each of the speakers you have here today are building bridges to bring innovation to space that space didn't even know it needed. Be ready to get your minds blown. Before we start into questions, I would like to give the floor to each of our speakers to introduce themselves, introduce their companies, and let you get familiar a little bit with what they do. Please keep the Slido up and start putting some questions in there, and we'll get to them at the end of this panel. Thank you so much. So I'd like to give the floor now to Jae Kim to tell us a little bit more about his company. Yeah. So to introduce Jae briefly, Jae is a Korean investor that has dedicated these past few years to developing his business into the space sector. With a background in engineering and an investor in the pharmaceutical field, Jae has developed Boryung's interest in space healthcare and is leading the Series C funding round of Axiom Space, which plans to build the first private space station. Bridging humans' presence in space and the edge of the pharma industry on Earth, Jae Kim is going to introduce a little bit about what he does with Boryung.
Thank you, Charlotte, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Oh, wait a minute. So should I just go forward with until I see my slide? All right, sorry about that. Yes, so as Charlotte mentioned, Barbara was supposed to be here, but because of the queue outside, she's being a little late, so I was kind of forced to be the first. I was contemplating whether I should sit or stand, but whenever I make the presentation for the company, it'll be always better to just stand. So before I begin the presentation of my company and what we're trying to do going forward, I think it's very important to acknowledge that there's no non-space companies. At the end of the day, it's all about where humanity is heading towards. So wherever we go, we need something, or we need things that we had on Earth, and that we will be needing the same thing if we go to a different place in space. So that's my basic philosophy of developing our business from pharma on Earth to different places in space. So we call ourselves Multi-Planetary Human Life Enabler, and I briefly explain what we're trying to do. So this is the first page from the SpaceX website. I think this picture has become even more stronger from the 2 days ago, because they made a huge progress, and they are trying to make a transportation system to take us beyond Earth. And there are companies like Axiom who's trying to build a destination in LEO, and I'm sure it's not going to stop in LEO. It will go to Moon, into Mars, and beyond. And they're also building the space suit that will enable us to be functional in hostile environments. And I'm sorry to mention about Intuitive Machines when I'm talking in the iSpace panel, but there's a company like Intuitive Machines and iSpace who are building a pathway towards Moon in different places in space. So we call ourselves Multi-Planetary Human Life Enabler. We asked some of the Korean students to describe what we are trying to do, and this is the picture that one of the students has drawn. And nowadays, we worry about our children looking down on the ground through the phone, but I want to change that path. So we started as a pharmacy. This is a picture of our pharmacy right after the end of Korean War. My grandfather is the founder, and I'm the third generation to lead the company. And because we started as a pharmacy, we do have a deep understanding of human health. So because of that understanding, we know that there's an underinvestment in human health in space. That's why we entered this phase. And this is the problems that NASA's HRP has categorized. So as we move to the right, that means that we will be exposed to the space environment for a longer period of time, and we will be traveling longer. The red means, as we know, it's more severe. Severe symptoms or severe conditions that the humans will face in space. So we need to fix that. So in order to do that, this is what we're trying to do. In different places in space, from Earth, Leo, Moon, and Mars, which presents a different environment, which will have a the environments will be different our body will react different in different environments. So in order to solve that, first we are bringing together the problem seekers like government agency and private companies, and we are also gathering the problem solvers. So we are doing that through our event called Humans in Space Challenge, and the main event will be held here in IAC tomorrow at 3:30, I think in the same auditorium. So that's the one thing that we're trying to do. And once we find the solutions, we want them to be prepared to launch and return the research samples to accelerate the innovation. And meanwhile, we also are looking to create and secure the necessary infrastructures to conduct those researches in different destinations. So we understand that more of us will go and stay in space more often, further, and longer, and we want to be prepared. So I know I ran kind of long. I apologize for that, but that's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay Kim. I would now like to give the stage to Jake Thompson. Jake is a chartered physicist with over 17 years' experience in the nuclear industry, spanning both civil and the defense sector. He now leads the strategy and development programs to deliver safe, competitive nuclear power solutions, which provide sustainable power to protect, to explore, and to endure, to take us further out in space. Jake, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's my absolute pleasure to be on this panel today, so thank you very much. My name is Jake Thompson, Director of Novel Nuclear and Special Projects for Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce isn't necessarily a name that you associate with space. And I'll say right at the start, we're not talking about luxury cars for the moon. Rolls-Royce is a power and propulsion company. We provide mission-critical power and propulsion systems on land, sea, air, and now space. So we've been developing, taking our nuclear technology and our nuclear heritage and applying that to the space sector. Wherever humans go and want to have a sustained presence, they're going to need power. And nuclear power is the most energy-dense form of power on the planet and in space. So we're taking our heritage and our nuclear design expertise and applying that to design microreactors for use in space. So my career, my 17 years in the nuclear industry has mostly been spent at the middle of this screen. Rolls-Royce designs, manufactures, and supports all of the nuclear reactors for the UK Royal Navy. So that's where I spent most of my career designing nuclear reactors for submarines. But if you think about it, the submarine application is pretty similar to the space application. Humans in a very harsh environment, no external oxygen, and they need power to sustain life and to enable them to undertake the missions that they need to undertake. So approximately 4 years ago, Rolls-Royce established a new business unit to take that expertise we have in the submarines world and start applying that to even smaller nuclear power systems for use here on Earth, for deployed defense power or powering industry, to decarbonize industry, powering, providing carbon zero power for data centers and mining applications and things like that. And then that same technology, you can scale down even further and make it light enough to launch to space, to provide power either on the lunar surface or power for propulsion, nuclear thermal propulsion or nuclear electric propulsion. So we've been working with the UK Space Agency for about the last 3 years now, developing our space microreactor that you can see on the screen there, which is a really lightweight, compact nuclear power system for the lunar surface. So the Artemis architecture for the lunar surface includes something that NASA called fission surface power. It's a small reactor to provide power on the lunar surface. There's a competition running in the US, and companies are designing a small microreactor system. And we've been partnered with our space agency in the UK to develop a UK variant of this. And the UK and the US, about 18 months ago, signed an agreement called the Atlantic Declaration that commits our nations to collaborating on nuclear power for space and for space power and propulsion, which is hugely exciting, and a departure from submarines to space, which is, as a personal journey, has been absolutely fascinating. I guess I'd finish with one observation, reflection, lived experience from working in a non-nuclear sector to, a non-space sector to a space sector, and that's collaboration. We know nuclear in Rolls-Royce, but we don't know space. So collaboration's been so important to us, and we've worked with quite a number of partners in the early stages of developing this, and that's been so valuable, so beneficial, and really rewarding, working with all our partners. And I think that's really key to taking the expertise that sits outside the space sector and bringing that technology and that innovation and that expertise into the space sector. So I look forward to talking to as many people as would like to come and see us on the UK Space Agency stand to talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I'd now like to give the floor to Octave de Gaulle, a French designer that studied in Paris, Cologne, but also right here in Milan. Octave has dedicated himself to the design and study of objects and environments that accompany humans in space. He measures the gap between how we imagine life in space to be and the crude reality of the existing installations. So with Spade Agency, the idea was to found a design agency that aspires to find the ideal forms that would allow us to really live in space and not just functionally survive. Octave, please tell us a little bit more about how you got into the space industry and what you do with Spade.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. Thank you very much. So I'm the CEO of Spade. It's a design agency, as you mentioned, that focus on creating new ways of living in space habitats. So we sort of imagine how the future of space exploration could look like. And we try to span areas from basic comfort, how to better sleep, gastronomy, how to have a better sense of intimacy, everything that can make the life of future space travelers a bit more than just survival. And the specifics with Spade is that we work closely with space agencies, but we also try to invite brands, private brands, those that are actually responsible for the quality of life we have here down on Earth, to the table. And this has been quite a challenge. And I'm very happy to be on this panel today that precisely this question is a very central one for us at Spade. Very quickly about how I came to work in space. I'm a product designer in the beginning, so what was fascinating in the beginning for me was this idea of microgravity and how everything that we take for granted here on Earth has to be redesigned completely. So what you see is my first approach here in 2014 to microgravity. So it sort of looked like a joke right now, thinking about it. But I wanted to understand how fluids work in microgravity. So I sort of welded together a rig where I could put some experiments, a camera, some lightning, and throw that off a cliff to try to simulate microgravity. And this didn't last long, obviously. So a couple of years later, fast forwarding, I had the chance to be invited on a couple of zero-G flight and to actually test and figure out many more indications about how microgravity really works and test some prototypes and figure out how it's going to be a game changer for all designers actually. Because when you think about it, everything that we take for granted in terms of product design here has to change completely when it goes to space. So this is a zero-G flight partnering with CNES, where I've had the chance to go many times now, and where we try to test first our solution and to create great products. So a little bit about the agency. We've also been designing a bottle of champagne for space. So that's a project we presented in IAC 2022, and it's now on the way to embark on AX4. And I wanted to show this picture because when I started designing, I thought, okay, this is just going to be solving a technical issue. And actually, because we are here to talk about how brands can be and how private actors and all, I don't want to say non-space actors for Jay, but say newcomers to the space have to work together. We had to help this private brand, so this is Moom, to go all the way from product integration, first design, testing, and now qualification for AX4. So this is a full service that we are offering from the first design, the first sketches on the drawing board, all the way to the launch pad. And well, very quickly, to give a footnote, I think we are living in a time that is very interesting for everyone here in this room, because the traditional actors of space are heading to further and longer journeys, and the LEO being now the place for private actors. We are in a place where everything that we invent for LEO will be groundbreaking solution to go ever further with the traditional agencies. And I think there is no two different worlds here. We are all working together, and there's a lot of solutions that are yet to be invented for those two platforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Octave. Thanks to all of you for introducing a little bit more about what you do. So I wanted to start maybe with a question to both Octave and Jake. You both mentioned in your presentations that you've collaborated with space agencies in developing some of the projects you work on. Can you tell us a little bit more about how space agencies have helped you work on these projects, and how that collaboration kind of came to happen? Do you want to start, Jake?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we've been really fortunate with the support that we've had from our space agency. Essentially, without support from the agency, we wouldn't have got as far as we have in developing our microreactor technology. One of the challenges we've faced, and I don't think it's unique to Rolls-Royce and our technology, is developing a business case for that's going to predict how, say, the lunar economy is going to develop, and therefore the power needs of future customers in order to underwrite an investment case to start a technology development program. However, if you never start a technology development program, the product will never be there, and in our case, we won't be able to provide power to customers to do what they need to do, and therefore develop the lunar economy, and it sort of becomes circular. So the support we've had from the Space Agency was really key to sort of catalysing initial investment, both from the agency, from the government, and from ourselves to start our development journey. So it's support from the agency and the government is absolutely key. And then just to add to that, nuclear technology development adds a kind of another layer of complexity, and government support is really key in backing and developing nuclear technology. So we're really grateful for the support we've had from our agency.
And maybe we'll be able to hear a little bit more from Jay or Barbara on the side of developing the business case. Octave, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you collaborated with CNES on some of your projects?
Yes. Yeah, we had the chance to collaborate with CNES. And I want to bounce back on the chart you showed from NASA assessing the risks in medical field, because this tells a lot about how these agencies, the traditional agencies, are focused on sending us ever further and ever longer. And once you go in this place, questions that were maybe secondary for a long time, better sleep, better intimacy, better food, better even ways to socialize and to make crew healthy for a long time. These were questions that were secondary for a long time, and now they are at the heart of how these agencies, the traditional agency, study the future of space exploration. And in this frame, they invite players like us that are product designers to think about this. So we've had the chance to be invited on those thinking, and we've had support from this, and also because we see a lot of will from CNES and from other agencies to collaborate with private brands. And I think this is not an easy task for two worlds that have not been collaborating for a very long time. And I see that we are at the right spot and with the right talent to do this right now.
Thank you. And you gave me the perfect transition to welcome on stage Barbara Belvisi, founder and CEO of Interstellar Lab. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry for being late. Cars.
So Octave was talking about how to live better in space and make food better and healthier in space. So I'd like to give you the floor a little bit to tell us about Interstellar Lab. You started Interstellar Lab after a career in investment and venture capital. And so now you are trying to bridge both Earth and space, helping us live better on Earth and expand into space. I'm going to pull up your slides. Sorry about that.
Cool, thank you. Sorry for being late. So hi everyone, I'm Barbara, the founder and CEO at Interstellar Lab. Awesome. Okay, so I founded the company 6 years ago with a vision, which is to help preserve life on Earth and help life expand into space. So what we do at Interstellar, we design, we build, and we operate modules inside which we put a lot of hardware, atmospheric system, hydraulic system, controlled by AI to autonomously recreate any type of climate so we can help life grow. We focus on plant life. A lot of people are focusing on human, but what we're trying to do is to build the infrastructure to kind of recreate biospheric system so we can help life spread. We have an Earth business where it's, well, think of that on Earth. We build big greenhouse system, fully autonomous, and we help customers like L'Oréal and DSM and natural ingredients company grow specific flower and plants that they need. And then we have our space program. So this is one of the render of a company we are collaborating with in a vision to create a space module. There are a few announcements coming this coming weeks. We're working with different private space stations to implement our technology. You have a, yeah. This one is a prototype that we built for NASA. So NASA really liked our approach of having a hardware which is autonomously controlled by an AI, and that is linked to a database with a lot of information about the plant. So we look at what plants produce specific molecule, which climate is needed, and then the software will recreate autonomously the hardware. Here, this device is called Nucleus. It's a combination of quarks. And each quark is a different climate. It's fully autonomous, and we use the CO2 from the insect to feed the plants, take the O2 from the plant to feed the mushrooms. So it's kind of a mini Earth into cubes to fit into a station. We won the 3 years competition called the Deep Space Food Challenge, started by NASA, with this device. And next year, so 2025, we're taking one of the quarks, we're making it miniaturized, so it can fly into a space station. What is the other slide that you have? Yes. So Earth, low Earth orbit, and then we have a lunar program. So for the lunar program, our goal is obviously to put a greenhouse on the moon, but before we put a gigantic greenhouse on the moon, even though thanks to SpaceX Starship, we might soon be able to bring a lot of mass on the lunar surface. But our first mission is called Mission Little Prince. We're actually going with Starship thanks to a partnership that we have with a company called Astrolab. Astrolab has built a rover. So Little Prince is a small greenhouse. It's actually, so this version is much smaller, but the actual version is going to be like this. So controlled environmental system, recreating the condition for roses to grow. Why do we need to send roses on the moon? Well, I will say because the little prince would love to see roses on the moon. And we're trying to make, to inspire. So it's a mission, scientifically and engineeringly speaking, it's hard. But it's a mission to inspire. So I don't know if you read the book, but it's a story of a little prince who lives on a super small planet and is in love with its rose. And then the little prince arrive on Earth. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but he misses the rose. So we're trying to make the dream of the little prince come true with this mission. And we're scheduled to fly between 26 and 28, so probably 27. Yeah, we're very, very excited about this one.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So maybe, can I ask you, you mentioned that you're collaborating with space agencies as well in developing some of your projects. How can space agencies better help you? Because if I understood correctly, at the beginning there was not much enthusiasm for new entrepreneurship in this field. And now it seems you're really leading the way and they'd like to collaborate more with you.
Yeah. Well, I started 7 years ago, 7 years ago. You know, I started in France. I come from a financial background, not an engineer, not a botanist, and I was starting telling the story of building, greenhouses to support life on the moon and then on Mars, which made a lot of people laugh, especially in Europe. So I reached out to a friend who's good friend with people at SpaceX and NASA, and I was like, well, I have this kind of crazy idea. I want to build these closed-loop systems we can support life. And to be honest, the company Interstellar will not exist without the support of NASA. So I arrived in California, went straight to NASA Ames, got connected with people with a group called the Space Portal, and they introduced me to a lot of people, a lot of folks. And I got support in America, unfortunately not in Europe, and then started collaborating with NASA. And so met more engineers, started building the project, and got a lot of, it's a cool idea. I got a pretty cool business plan. I have a finance background, so it looks like something solid. We don't care if you're not a aerospace engineer or anything. There are plenty of them, and they can work for you. And so that happened in the U.S. And then I was able to come back in Europe, but like two years after starting the company in the U.S. And then it was much more interesting for ESA and CNES perspective because I got the NASA stamp. So I think Europe is getting better and better at empowering entrepreneurs, and Octave is a good example of that. But it's true, it was at the beginning it was really hard. Yeah.
Thanks. So I'd like to ask Jakim, are you collaborating with any space agencies? Are you looking for collaborations in that sector? And how could they maybe contribute to what you're trying to do?
To answer your question, yes, we are working a lot with space agencies around the world. So in Korea, CASA was just established this May, and CASA and NASA recently announced that they will collaborate on the human health issues in space. And that topic is the topic that we have been focusing on for years. So that naturally led us to work together with CASA and NASA. And if you come to our Humans in Space Challenge Finer Pitch event tomorrow at 3:30, we are also co-hosting that event with IAC and ESA. So we are basically working with many space agencies who's trying to tackle human health risks. And because for the in foreseeable futures, I mean, the governments will be the ones who will be sending people to space. So I think that it's a natural fit between us and the government agencies to work together.
Thank you. And if I could also ask maybe both Barbara and yourself, you both have, a background in investment, and you were mentioning how you were told that there's lots of space engineers out there, so focus on the business plan. What was your first impression when stepping in the space sector? How are we doing in terms of business plans, investments? What can we do better? What are we already doing great?
The first thing I would say when I step into this industry is I was amazed by, that's going to be more of a general comment, but how genuine people are and authentic about achieving a common goal. Space is really hard, and so it requires collaboration, and that's something you don't see in other industries. And space has this also very interesting capability, I don't know how to say that, but to gather people from different countries, and so it doesn't matter where you're coming from, but we're all trying to make it work. So that's pretty unique, and I was really amazed because it's true. When you don't come from this industry, people fantasize about it, but it's really true. And then at the end of the day, we're in a business world, and so you have to find investors and have a proper business plan. I think from what I see right now, there are many more seed stage investors, so doing pre-seed and seed, and it's good. It's needed because we're not that many, but it's definitely going up. I think there is a transition that is a little bit hard for startups right now, which is the transition from seed to A with a proper business plan. And you cannot build a space company if you rely only on governmental programs. So you have to find terrestrial application and prove that you can generate immediate revenue. And that's really key. I mean, the whole company I built is, and we have this like Earth application. But you really, I think it's one of the advice for all the entrepreneurs really to find this application and not only to rely, because it's not that the space program not going to happen, it's just that it's going to be delayed, and time equal money for startup equal burn rate. So you really need to make sure you have enough cash and you can plan and you can have a backup plan so you can keep up with the distance. Eventually, I think one thing that we're missing right now is also a killer application when it comes to Earth space application of a space technology back on Earth, because we all agree about that there are tremendous opportunities about developing technology in microgravity, but there is still not, one example that generated billions and that will just prove all the investors that it can happen. So I think this is what we need to do in the coming years, is really to find those killer application so we can get more money into the space industry.
From my experience, when I first entered this new arena, so to speak, people were so binary. They were saying, oh, so you're coming from non-space industry. But how I envisioned from the beginning was that there's no non-space, because, at the end of the day, we're all space. Like, Earth is a part of a space. And when you focus on the human health part, wherever you go, humans have to survive and live. And then, like, the stories that Octave was saying, and then follows the quality of life wherever we go. Whether it could be a champagne, it could be a fragrance, it could be a clothing. Wherever we go, it will follow. So I had a really hard time convincing people that it's all connected, but people's perspective was, okay, so there's a space industry. So I was always saying that it's not an industry, it's a new domain. So I'm still in a process of convincing people to be on board in that idea. And because we have seen so much progress around the world about sending anything in space. I mean, over this week, for example, there was a Starship, and the day after, there was a Clipper mission that was launched by SpaceX also. And we've seen multiple and more launches, and people feel like, oh, okay, so maybe we are going to space. I think that wall is being broken as time goes by, but we still need to work on it more, I think.
And Octave, maybe if I can ask you the question as well. So from your perspective, coming from a completely different domain, how has it been stepping into the space sector and essentially maybe telling aerospace engineers you can make their designs a bit better?
Well, it has been hard for sure. It's been hard to find the right spot because when you're a newcomer and you're not coming from the industry, they wanted to put me in a box. So basically, for the engineers, I was kind of an artist, and for the art of space, because there is a field of art of space, I was more of an engineer. So I had to demonstrate that we all need to work together in this case. You know, I do not pretend that we are better at engineering or that we can do the engineers' work. I'm just trying to tell the people that are inventing the future of space that we could add a layer of human culture, and we have to have that layer because, of course, when you're a trained astronaut and you're going for a mission, you can endure survival conditions. But when you are projected in 2-3 years missions with the same roommates, and you cannot open the window, and you will not have a fresh apple, and you will not, I mean, and you have to stick together, then the mission success might be dependent on other criteria that we have for low Earth orbit and professional astronauts. And you might want to have some cards up your sleeve. So talking about the champagne bottle, it was a great laugh in the beginning, like, do we really need a champagne bottle? But actually, being able to enable a ritual of conviviality, that is something very humane, that is something we do yearly, you know, and being able to imagine that you can celebrate New Year's Eve or anniversary or something that make you relate to the fact that you are human when you are in the worst possible condition and that you tend to forget that you are human and you become part of a machine. This is far more precious that what we can imagine, you know. And it took some convincing, but I think right now those kinds of projects, people both in the agencies and in the brands see that they have a meaning. They are not just here to fancy low Earth orbit 10-day stays.
And Jake, your experience was probably a little bit different. So you come from a very established industry. And so it was a little bit about learning new things and trying to apply, you know, a breadth of experience into this new field. I've already received a lot of questions actually about, you know, how do you deal with nuclear in space? Was there a little bit of, you know, maybe a difficulty in explaining what you can do and the value of exploring that? What are kind of the obstacles that people are afraid of at this stage?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, two thoughts. First one, yeah, there are quite a lot of similarities. Nuclear's very hard and space is very hard, and you put them together and it's really hard. But they're also highly regulated industries for good reason. So there's quite a lot of similarities. There's also a challenge there, and it probably goes to some of the questions that you just alluded to, is how do you regulate nuclear in space? And there's and this is one of the challenges around the sustainability of nuclear in space, and how do those two regulatory regimes sort of gel and mesh together, from kind of launch authority for a nuclear payload, and then policy and regulation that doesn't exist today in any nation state, but also not completely in international policy, around ownership of nuclear systems in space and on the lunar surface, and ownership of that that asset and that liability, and disposal of that asset at the end of its life. And that's one of the really big challenges for us in the space nuclear sector, is around that policy and regulation that doesn't yet exist. The other thought and observation I was just going to make was, when we started this adventure, space nuclear, it was absolutely fantastic for our existing workforce and for recruitment. Nuclear attracts a lot of people for different reasons. There's nuclear in defense and nuclear for clean energy, but then nuclear for space exploration brought a whole sort of new angle and a new set of people into our business. And that's been fantastic, and a real kind of injection of energy and a new mission. It's been really energizing for the business.
Building bridges also for people. So I'd like to ask each of you to maybe give us a little bit of a feel of, in 10 years, what will your companies will really offer in space? So Jae Kim, could you tell us maybe a little bit about what is this maybe one or two key healthcare advantages and innovations that you're trying to unlock with what you're doing at Boryung?
I don't think there's only one thing that we're really focusing on, but as we get to know more about the problem itself and the way to solve the problems, fundamentally we get to understand our body better. So how our body works in a different environment naturally lead us to understand our body at Earth stage better. So that will naturally lead us to make better treatments for diseases. Maybe we can utilize the microgravity or gravity in different environment to improve the technology that we already have on Earth to manufacture some of the pharmaceuticals. So I cannot specifically say what I'm looking for and what will happen, but just fundamentally the improving the understanding of our body itself will produce technology that we have never seen before. So that's my view, and we are trying to foster that through the Humans in Space program.
And maybe on a more personal note, you've been mentioning that your family's been in pharmaceuticals for many generations. What does your family think about what you're doing?
Oh, my grandfather hates me. I have to tell you that, but...
How are you going to convince him?
I never succeeded in convincing him. He still hates me, but because I run two different businesses at the same time. Because we are doing quite well on the already established pharma business side, I was able to somewhat keep him calm about the entire enterprise. But he still worries me. It's not that he hates me, but he still worries about how it's going, because his understanding of the space is that we need to invest billions to make something happen. That's his belief. So it was hard for me to just have a conversation with him. But on the other hand, my mother was very supportive from the beginning, because he understood that this is really important for the, not just for the company, for my country, for the humanity. So to be a part of it is a very special thing. So she has been really supportive. And yeah, that was the reactions from my family members.
That's good. Trying, new things for the family as well. It'll be interesting. I'm sure they'll be convinced. I also wanted to ask Barbara, when we look at your biopods, we obviously see, a place where we can grow food, but it's also a very nice place to just walk around, spend some time. Are you already preparing this experience of humans in space, similarly to what Octave might be doing?
Okay. Before I answer your question, Octave, can I tell a story? Yeah. It's a funny story because you talk about your grandfather, and so it made me think of my grandfather and your grandfather. And it's kind of a funny story that shows how space can clear the karma of family. So when I was 21, I learned that my grandfather tried an assassination attempt on Octave grandfather, the General de Gaulle. It's called the Attentat du Petit Clamart. And my father and my parents hid that from us, we're 3 kids, because they didn't want us to know, but it's in the history books. And my grandfather was on TV. And when I started entering the space industry, someone connected me with Octave. And I think it's the first thing I told you when we jumped on the call, which was, let's clear our grandfather karma and show that even though they hated each other, we're going to drink champagne in space in a garden.
That's a great story.
It's a funny story. Then and it goes back, so actually it's making the link about the garden and living in space. Humans, we've always been on Earth, and we're thrive and we're happy when we're surrounded with nature. So it's not what we're building at Interstellar, it's not only about food. Food is one application. We do fragrance and pharmaceutical on Earth, we'll do in space, it's also one application. But the most important part is how do we recreate the system so we can help Earth life expand to other planets. Because if you put in a very long-term time frame, at a certain point, the sun's going to blow. And life that we know on Earth will disappear. Okay, it's like 4 billion years from now. We have a little bit of time to prepare for it. But I think it's part of the space, our space mission, all of us here, is to understand what's going on Earth, preserve the biodiversity, but also I kind of believe humans are here to build the technology, not only for humans to expand to other planets, but also for Earth life actually to expand. And I think this is the drive that we have in us. It's much bigger than human. It's like nature itself. And so how I envision the company in 10 years, well, building more of our systems so we can bring plant life, not only plants, but mushrooms, insects, a small biosphere into low Earth orbit, that we're going to have greenhouses on the moon. And I think people don't realize, but what happened was Starship the past few days ago. It's completely changing the game of space exploration. The path at which they are by building like so many rockets, there is a window in 2026 and then in 2028 to go to Mars. And I really believe SpaceX is going to try to reach the 2026 window. And if they miss it, it's going to be 2028. So it means that we might go to Mars before we change this new space station, before we implement the new space station, and before we build a base on the moon. So which is fascinating. And that's going to happen in the 5 coming years. So I'm super happy to be alive in this time. and I think the 5 coming years it's going to be crazy. And I'm very excited.
So I do need to check the other side of the story. Octave, are you going to have an aperitif champagne on the moon with Barbara?
Obviously, anytime. No, I think I have to concur also on what your goal is. I think when you are focusing on these issues, you notice that a lot of things that we take for granted here, and a lot of things that are very natural because we are born here and because we are surrounded with nature and because everything that we act with, gravity holds everything together. We take these things for granted, and when you talk with astronauts that have stayed long enough in space, they tell you what they miss. They tell you how a simple gesture can become a nightmare, can take up to hours. And so I think the idea that we are we are all non-space people in the beginning, so that means that 20 years ago we wouldn't have had any chance at having a career in the space industry because we don't have the right background. And what our company does is that it invites more and more of those people to participate to the challenges that are yet to be solved by the space industry. So that means it's been 70 years. We are going to space, and we still drink from a straw, from pouches. We still eat rehydrated food that I think is not the best and the most tasteful way to enjoy life. But anyway, what I want to say is that we act as a bridger of those two worlds, both because the people we invite are product designers, so they have empathy, they have a certain angle at seeing how human experience needs to be designed and need to be accompanied by objects, by environments. So this is one thing. So that's the professional that we have at Spade. But we also invite a lot of non-space actors, or yet to be space actors, that are very, very happy to participate to this challenge, that hold a crazy knowledge in their field, in the field of sleep, in the field of comfort, in the field of growing food, in the field of intimacy, pharmaceutical, and all these professionals, they have spent their life making life a quality life here on Earth, and it's very easy to bring them today into the space challenges. And I see, if I have a wish in 10 years, is to see more and more of these people and being able to bridge them into this world of space, so that the traditional actors of the space industry, or the ones that have been there forever, can focus on the challenges that they have at hand, and there are many, and we can help them foster a better human life outside of Earth.
Jake Thompson, you might be the one who makes all of this happen. When are we seeing the first power generation happening in space, on the moon, maybe on Mars?
The early 2030s. As I said, we're in our early concept development phase, but we're already into hardware, doing some hardware testing, I talked earlier about the Artemis missions. I think there is a plan and there is a schedule to put efficient surface power microreactor on the moon in the early 2030s. I go back to my experience in the submarine program. There's a big analogy for me. So Rolls-Royce have been providing the nuclear reactors to provide power to keep submariners at sea constantly for the last 60 years. So my vision for the next 10 years, from the early 30s onwards, is Rolls-Royce microreactor providing power to a permanent base on the moon, where astronauts can enjoy an aperitif in a lunar greenhouse.
Thank you very much to all of you. If we could just bring the Slido slide up. We've got a little bit of time for questions, and I can see a lot of them already coming in on the app. So maybe I'll start with a question for Octave that came up a lot. It's about that champagne bottle in space. So you were mentioning there was a lot of technical challenges in making champagne space-proof. And so you said a lot of people laughed at the beginning. It turns out it's really difficult. Tell us a little bit about why it was so difficult.
So very quickly, it is difficult because you can bring the substance easily. If it was just to bring the substance, you could find a way. There exist many pouches that could hold this pressure and whatever. What we wanted to bring is the ritual, because what matters in this project is not bringing a bit of alcohol. It's actually bringing a ritual of conviviality, something that you can deploy and that can actually bring something to the table of the astronauts. And this ritual starts with sharing a bottle. You don't get a dose of alcohol. Everyone doesn't get a dose that is exactly the same. You need to share the bottle. You need to pour the drinks. And how do you pour when there is no gravity? You need to be able to clean glasses, to smell the aromas of champagne. Champagne is a blend of more than 100 wines that have been refined for a recipe that's been refined for 200 years. It's one of the most complex aromatic beverage that exists. And you don't want to throw that all in the garbage to say, hey, we just did champagne, but we didn't smell anything, we didn't have any feel of the aromas. So we wanted to bring the whole package, and to do that, we had to study how that experience works and try to translate all those challenges into feasible solution. And on top of that, you add the fact that champagne is the traditional world, that it has its own rules, and that we didn't want to to not bring those rules. And one of those rules is that champagne needs to be conserved in glass. And so when you factor the risk of liquids and the risk of glass shards, and you present all this to NASA, you better be ready.
Tough job. Barbara Belvisi, a lot of people were wondering, what is the lifetime of the plants that you'll be growing in space? How is that going to work? That rose on the moon, what's the plan?
The rose on the moon, it's a tricky one because it's 40 days of light and then it's cold. So there is a program. There is a. We'll see. We'll see. We're planning for a different option. Ideally, we would love a rover to carry the little greenhouse in different location, so we make sure that the system can survive. We don't know. We'll try our best for the first mission. And the hardest part for the lunar program and the one that the mission Little Prince with Astrolab and SpaceX is that we might spend a couple of months in orbit for the refueling and everything, and that's the hardest part, because if you stay a few months in orbit, you want to make sure you have enough plant life support system equals water, CO2, and nutrient solution to support plant growth during this phase before it arrives on the moon. Versus if we go with a lander, different type of lander, we can just take off from the Earth and go to the moon. So, but they have less mass and they can carry less payload in terms of form factor. So that's a little bit tricky. So we'll see. We'll do our best, and then we'll iterate. We keep on doing more and more, so we make sure we can have a full greenhouse full of plants.
And one last question for Jae Kim. You recently, you talked a little bit about working with Axiom Space. Can you tell us more about your collaboration and what you're planning for the next few years?
So everyone knows that there's a competition about who's going to win the CLD contract from NASA, because eventually the winner of the CLD will become the next ISS, and which will bear all the essence of global collaboration as well. So we are working hard with them to win that contract by collaborating in pharmaceutical research in LEO. And we also partner with Axiom about the Humans in Space program as well. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. And one very quick one for Jake. Someone was wondering what TRL level would you say are your technologies at Rolls-Royce at this stage?
Yeah, good question. I'll answer quickly. So the individual building blocks, the kind of technology building blocks, are all pretty high TRL, mostly in service. TRL 7 to 9 for the individual building blocks, but the whole system integration for space nuclear is pretty low. It has been done before. NASA flew a nuclear reactor back in the mid-60s, and there have been Russian nuclear reactors flown in space as well. But current iteration, yeah, about TRL 3 to 4 for whole system integration.
Okay, thank you so much to all of you for joining today. If you'd like to ask some more questions, you can find Jae Kim at the Boryung and Humans in Space stands, just next to iSpace as well. I believe Barbara doesn't have a stand, but around Boryung and iSpace could be a good spot. Same for Octave. And Jake, I believe you're on the UKSA Pavilion. Thank you so much to all of you. A big round of applause for our speakers.